All right. Well, welcome to the Synchronicity Show. It is your host, Kevin Wathey. And in today's episode, I sit down with world-renowned keynote speaker on Intentionality, a retreat facilitator, and a one-on-one executive coach. Mr. Finnian Kelly has been dubbed the business mystic and is the creator of Intentionality.com, a unique framework Finnian uses to guide people to a purposeful and aligned in their beliefs, thoughts, and behaviors so they can feel more in love with their lives. As an entrepreneur, Finnian built and exited 2 multi-million-dollar companies in the financial industry. He's the creator and chief visionary officer of Intentionality.com, and also a retreat facilitator providing entrepreneurs with unique, mind-shifting experiences so they can awaken and connect deeply with their business and truest self. Mr. Finnian, my man, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Great. Thanks, Kevin. We've just been connecting about our travel adventures, so I feel excited and looking forward to exploring some of your favorite places.
Very, very cool. And that is almost the perfect segue into where I want to start the conversation today. And that is because your life itself has been a pilgrimage of sorts. I did a little bit of research on you before this coming in, and the pilgrimage I'm hinting at is the one that took you to the Camino del Santiago in northern Spain, which reminded me of Paulo Coelho's novel, The Pilgrimage, if you've read that. And I'm really curious, and this is kind of broad to start, but in which ways do you see your life as a pilgrimage, and in which ways do you see it as more of just an experiential practice or process?
Wonderful. So I do see it as a large pilgrimage, and the way I'd see it is as a pilgrimage to coming back to myself, coming back to my true nature. I almost feel like the first phase of life is all about just losing your way a little bit. Like we go through this period where we've come out, we're fresh, and then we start getting conditioned by other people, by whether it's social, whether it's our family, and through that we inherit a bunch of subconscious programs which effectively help us forget who we really are. Then we might go through a spiritual awakening, like I definitely did, where we suddenly realize that we're not that person we thought we are, and there was something to find our way, find that path. And then once you find that path, it's not good enough to find it. It's really important to keep with it, because it's very easy in the modern day world to forget who we are again and repeat the cycle. And I definitely learned that when I did do the pilgrimage across Spain, which is a 810 kilometer, 500 mile pilgrimage across the country. And I went through that journey myself, even reliving that experience again. The first part, I was very consumed in my mind, just completely there, thinking, going through the battle. Second was very body. And then third, I finally connected with who I really was. And I just became present and had my great awakening, to tell you the truth, like where I really felt the divine being in me and everything else. So I would say that that's my life. And I feel like the experiences come in as the playfulness of the human. So I have this concept about the 5 priorities of intentional being. And I believe that if we all lived by these 5 priorities, we would feel purposeful, we would feel passionate, we would feel whole. And the 4th priority is joy. It's why we're in this human body with our senses, to actually have different experiences, to play, to have fun, and to joy. And whether they're really important to the pilgrimage, I'm not sure. They're definitely an important part of being a human being. And sometimes they can help you be on that pilgrimage. Other times they can actually be a distraction. And I think that's one of our important practices, is to be able to distinguish, is this truly adding value, or is it a distraction? And I'm a traveler. I'm in Nicaragua right now. And I definitely know there's been times where I've traveled as a distraction rather than truly trying to find myself.
I love that you point that out, because it's so true. And we travel. Some will take a vacation from their job as a distraction to get away from what they were actually experiencing in, quote, real life. But then the other side is you can actually travel as an experience to then deepen your connection with self, with others, with the planet, whatever it ends up being. The point, and kind of where I want to go a little bit deeper, is you spoke on how we're kind of born perfect, or we're born into our truest self, but then we get distracted and lose that. Why do you think we get distracted? What is it that pulls us out of that divine perfection, or that perfectness that we are when we are born, and then we think that we have to become something else? Why do you think that is?
So I have a couple of different things on this. If you believe in God, originally it was one, and then God asked the question, well, what's more? What else is there? And in that moment, it created separation. It almost wanted a friend, someone to see part of itself, and it split itself into two. Still God, but they were different elements trying to explore themselves. And then it kept asking that question. We created more and more separation. And we went down to the path where we're down in the 3D world, into this materialistic world, all different individuals. And then the spiritual journey is to come back, trying to find ourselves, to come back to that feeling, back to that oneness, back to that connection. So in some regards, you could say that we are born a baby and we're open, and suddenly we lose ourselves to then have the act of finding ourselves again in one way. That could be one theory. Another theory could be that when we're born, our true nature, and I like to say true nature rather than true self. True nature is love. We're a love ball. It's why people are so connected to babies, because they remind themselves of who they really are, their true nature. There's that little touch. They see themselves in there and they're like, oh my God, I want that feeling. I want that. Now, some people get attached to that and have more babies. Other people get a fleeting moment and then they remember and they go through a period of growth themselves. And then others don't really pick up on it and they just go down their path, which is different. But we get this connection, and the baby is love and exposed, and they're fully open, because that's what love is. Love is fully open to receive. But in that moment, because we're fully open, we allow things to come inside of us. And because there's a lot of ego around there, a lot of different personalities, we become very exposed, very vulnerable to other people's perceptions of us, of their views. We basically just get all this code put into us unintentionally. And I like to describe ourselves as a computer. With a computer, you know that good code in equals good programs out, good outcomes out. If you put bad code in, you end up with programs which aren't working for you, that have bugs in it. Very similar to us. We are the hardware, and then inside of us, code gets put into us, and then we have programs running. And if you're not liking the output, it means you've got some faulty code into us. And this is almost the spiritual journey, is to discover what code is in you. And is this code working for you or not working for you? Now, one of our lessons in life is that most of our life, we haven't been the coder. Someone else has coded us, whether it's our parents, our teachers, our friends, media. It's all being put into us. Now, some of that code may be working well for us. We may have some really great programs, and we might have been around a teacher who really imparted some wisdom on us, and that's working well for us in thinking. But then we might have been around our mother who had some negative relationships with money, for example, and they might have infiltrated our money code, our money stories in a really poorly way. So for the rest of our life, we keep making these decisions, and then we keep coming up against ourselves, and we wonder, why am I not getting the outcome that I want? It's because you have code which isn't working to you. So then what we have to do through self-discovery is then go, okay, I've identified that this code wasn't put in by me. It's not working for me. How do I become the coder, take control from my mum who created that code and said, I'm taking out control of this money story program, and I'm going to recode me with positive programming. And once we get into that level of connection, suddenly we start not feeling the victim. We start feeling like the creator. We can change our situation. We can change our scenario. We can get different outcomes. And that really is the liberative path, when you realize that you don't have to succumb to conditioning. You can really change it for yourself. But that's a very intentional practice. You have to be, one, self-aware enough to identify that you've got some code in you that isn't working. You then have to have the courage to go on to the approach to actually tackle it and override it, and also the courage to admit that you don't have good things working for you. And then you also have to have the knowledge to be able to do it as well. And that's really what I'm sure like you're doing with people as well, and myself, is trying to help people become almost an architect or a designer of their life.
You touch on finances and money, and money is a big one for a lot of people. Why do you think that that's such a sensitive subject to talk about? So many people absolutely dislike or hate talking about finances, but two, then that same thought process or conditioning is then passed down from year to year to year, generation to generation, because you don't see it very often. Someone going from like low to middle or middle to high. You're basically born into where you're staying, even though there is the ability to move around. Why do you think that's so generational, maybe is the word for it, or so inherently tied into how we are raised and how we perceive the world as we grow up?
So I have a controversial view on money. I actually believe money can be one of the greatest spiritual teachers of all. It's when we think about what money really is, it's the thread that flows through everything in society. It's the connection between me and someone in Rwanda. There's a connection. There's a direct connection through the money flow, through exchange throughout the world. So that means that it can be incredibly powerful, but also it can be incredibly dangerous as well, because it's just energy. And if it's just energy, if it has good vibrational attachment to it, if there's a frequency going through which is positive, it's going to be uplifting. If it's negative, it's going to be like lowering a vibrational state. So this is why I think it's so prevalent in our life, and why I say it's a spiritual teacher is because the way you have a relationship with money, you get insights about what potential saboteurs you have inside of you. I actually have this concept. I have this money archetype, which is 12 financially happy saboteurs. They're the things which are sabotaging your ability to be financially happy. And my definition of financially happy is being both happy and wealthy now. It's not sometime in the future. It's not either or. It's your ability to do it now. But we have these saboteurs inside of us. And what happens is they get passed down from one generation to the next. And because it's so prevalent in our society, money is being exchanged all the time, we actually, by the nature of how beliefs work, we want to validate our beliefs. Even if they're completely wrong, this is something which is called cognitive dissonance, we will twist them until we find a way to make them true. And because it's so accessible in our life, we're exposed to it every day, and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So if people can identify their money saboteurs, what they'll also start identifying is that these aren't just money saboteurs, these are saboteurs of life in general. And once you start getting connected to go, well, what are my beliefs around money? What are my thoughts that are coming from these beliefs? Then what behaviors do I act on because of these thoughts? And then what's the resulting feeling I get from these behaviors? You'll identify your money story. And the funny thing about that loop that I described, it's a closed feedback loop. So once you get that feeling then reinforces the belief, which then creates more of those thoughts, which then creates more of those behaviors. And it gets stronger and stronger. And this is why sometimes you actually get to feel like you're going insane, because you're like, I don't want this, but I keep feeling this way. It's because you're just in a closed feedback loop. Now, the great thing about a closed feedback loop is you change one variable, the whole loop changes. Everything changes. Now, it is quite hard to change your beliefs. They're ingrained to us. That's the core program which is inside of us. That takes a lot of willpower, and it's very confronting to be able to do that. It is possible, but directly tackling your beliefs are hard. Thoughts, man, have you tried to control your thoughts? I've tried that game, and that doesn't work. Like the whole idea, like I have a master's in positive psychology, and I can tell you, I can't do positive thinking all the time. Naturally, we have lots of different thoughts. So there can be 1,000 thoughts to one core belief, and they can all be different. And the way I describe thoughts is when I'm sure you've heard of the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the famous Buddhist Hunks just talks about love so much. Incredible. I haven't found a single person who doesn't love him. His message is brilliant because it's truth. It's just about love. And he talks about how we have two seeds in us at all times. We have a seed, which is the weed seed. It grows into a weed, something which isn't very beautiful. And then we have a seed which grows into a beautiful lotus flower, for example, or rose, whatever you're connected to. They're always in there. Now, what you water will determine what grows. If you water the weed seed, it will grow. If you water the lotus flower seed, it will grow. Now, the seeds, your thoughts, they're there. There's negative and positive thoughts. They're always there. Your behavior is the water. When you choose to indulge that negative thought, like acting on it, taking some behavior on it, you're now growing that weed, and it's going to get stronger, which then just creates a story in you that you're not worthy, that you feel bad, all these different stories, and then you have more of these thoughts. But if in that moment you remember, okay, I have two seeds in me. For that negative thought, there's also a positive thought, which I can choose to act on and choose to take a behavior on. What you've just done is you have introduced something into the closed feedback loop. You have now put some positive energy into that closed feedback loop from that behavior change. And then what happens is suddenly you feel a different way. You might go, oh, I feel proud, or I feel love, I feel connection, which then chips away at a new belief, which if maybe it was, I don't feel worthy or I'm not lovable, suddenly you're like, perhaps I am someone who's valuable, which then drives more of these positive thoughts, and it just creates this reinforcing positive loop. So that's where I'm always helping people go, you know how to do this because you're doing it in the negative way. We just need to spin it the other way and you'll be able to create the same belief. And this is why just a few different behavior changes, I've seen people's lives change just by putting in something simple like waking up in the morning, or doing some meditation in the morning, or just taking a breath every hour. And before you know it, you become a completely different person, because that behavior then inspires other different behavior changes in the future. And that's why I really encourage people to get into their money story and identify what's happening for, because it's so, do you know why it's so easy? Why people focus on money? It's because it's so quantifiable. It's so easy. Our linear mind can easily understand it. We can see it. Oh, I have $1,000 in my bank. That's better than $100. I have $100,000 in my bank. I'm now worth more than I was at 10,000. It's so easy to measure. That's why we love it and we attach so much to it. But life isn't linear. It's exponential. It's a flow, and also goes through curly paths sometimes. So when we keep measuring ourselves by such a simple way, we're never going to seek true fulfillment, and it's going to keep inhibiting us from really being our true nature, which is that loving feeling.
There are so many avenues I want to take this conversation right now. I think I have 7 different, let's go here notes. So the first point that you made, and that brought to mind a thought, and that's that your energy goes where your attention flows, or energy flows where your attention goes. So if you're focusing on the negative, that's where things are going to go. If you're focusing on the positive, or as I say, there's a positive in every negative, you just need to be open and willing to find it. That shift is what determines and dictates then the outputs. So, and you were talking about fix the inputs, the outputs will change themselves. There were 2 things that you talked about here, and the last 2, like last week and the week before, the last 2 books I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear and Win Bigly by Scott Adams. It's about the persuasion and psychology of Donald Trump, which is blowing my mind right now. But he, in the book, he talks that, so you're saying money is quantifiable, and that's why we are able to attach ourselves to it, because numbers don't lie. You can attach yourself to a number, to a thing. So he talked about, and he said, so does $1, one coin, one whatever, determine if you're rich or poor? Most people would say no. But once you get to a certain point, one coin, now another coin, now another coin, there is one coin that is going to be the shift from rich and poor, because you're just compounding one after the other. So remove that from money for a second and let's focus on habits. Because if you're trying to fix the input to fix the output, what is one little habit that you can do every single day that compounds, that then fixes the output itself? So if you relate it then to money, one coin can make you wealthy. If you relate it to a habit or a ritual, one daily small habit can make you successful. You just need to see and find what the right one is for you. I thought that was I was shocked that the last two books I read are literally the 2 points you made right here.
I love it. And it is so true. But I'm going to take it one step further. And this is the interesting thing with money is that you can have, I've seen people who keep getting one more dollar, but they are still poor, because if you don't fix the mindset, the relationship with money, it doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account, you're going to still feel poor. I have this saying that security breeds insecurity. So when I was a financial advisor, the number one goal that people wanted was security. And I said to them, I would help them see that you realize the whole reason why you want security is because you feel so insecure inside. You don't feel safe. You don't feel whole. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust the universe. And you believe that if I create my external environment to create a particular way, that I'm going to feel secure. But then what happens is, and I've seen this, I've helped people become millionaires, reach their number, and they get in there. And what they've done is they've built this fortress. Do you think they feel secure? No, because what they start doing is they start worrying about losing it, or that it's going to suddenly disappear, or they realize, oh no, that my fortress isn't strong enough now. I need more. I need another defense layer. And they keep getting more and more because their internal state is insecurity. Now, I'm not saying you can't feel financially stable. That could be okay. But life is impermanent. So the whole idea of security doesn't exist. It's going to be taken away from you at some point. So what I want people to feel more, and this is the whole concept behind financially happy, and it actually plays into all life. It's just that money is an avenue to do it, is that it all comes into your relationship with yourself in the present moment. If you can't feel secure now, you can't feel secure in the future. It's the exact same with manifestation. If you want more love, the only way to manifest love into your life is to attach to the love you already feel in your life. If you go into a manifestation feeling unlovable or feeling lack or feeling scarce, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Where your energy flows, your attention goes. So you're going to start feeling more and more connected to that feeling of lack or unloved. And that's what you're going to just start manifesting into your life. And it's the problem with most people's prayers. When do people pray to God traditionally? It's when something's going so bad in their life and they feel completely lack. We should be praying when we feel so amazing. That's a rule of mine. I will not get down and meditate or manifest or prayer unless I'm able to evoke myself into such a high vibrational state, one where I feel love and gratitude. If I find myself coming up against myself, I just stop, because I know I'm about to do more destruction in my life than if I actually just didn't do anything. But other times I get there and I just feel just expansive. I feel love, I feel gratitude. And then you're in a powerful place. You can attract whatever you want into your life.
How do you, in relation to money, what is the process or steps that you would take a client or someone you're working with through in order to work through one of those limiting beliefs or break the cycle, that negative feedback loop you were talking about?
Great. So the first thing we do is I have a 5-step process I do with intentionality. We have 4 different pathways in intentionality. One is direction, another is love, another is prosperity, and the final is well-being. Very similar to what you're doing with well-being, which is awesome. And with the prosperity one, and any of the 4 programs, the first step is intentional clarity. It's all about getting complete clarity around where you are right now and what has led to where you are right now. Now, with the prosperity one, what we need to have a really good understanding of is your money story. And because that's what's led to where you are right now. Your money story is a combination of your family of origin story. So you'll notice very similar to if you're going into why you're going through a traumatic experience right now. We go through your family of origin story a lot of the time. You're going through a trauma relationship with money right now, so we go to family of origin. We look at what were you exposed to? What were the first memories you had of money? What were your parents talking about money? What beliefs did you have from them? What were people saying? And you get this story. And through that, you identify, what are my current beliefs around money? And the one extra thing we also do a timeline. So then we do a timeline of money throughout your life. So not just your birth, it's 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, all the way up to where you currently are. And we talk about what was the most positive thing you remember about money then? What was the most negative thing? What did you learn about money then? And you start going through this, and out of that, you shape your money story. And it tells you, here are my current beliefs around money. These are the thoughts that are coming because of these beliefs. These are the behaviors that I'm taking because of my relationship with money. And then these are the feelings I'm evoking because of these behaviors. We then look at it, and now some of your money story is working for you. It's positive. Someone might have conditioned something into you. And we look at that and we go, well, we like this about your money story, so let's really get connected to this. But what are things you don't like about your money story? Well, I don't like that I never feel like I have enough. Well, let's explore that. So we get that clarity around where you're currently at and what has been the cost. And this is the really important thing. What has been the cost of your money story as well? So the cost might be, well, I've earned $2 million in my life and I actually have $100 in my bank account. That's a common thing. Or that it's getting in the way of my relationships. I don't trust people. Or it could be that I am so focused on work to create more that it's affecting my health and well-being. All these different areas. So we look at the cost, and then we define, well, what is it that you actually would want to feel, and what were the behaviors? And then we look at it, and that's the intentional clarity bit. We have just a complete, honest state of ourselves. And then the final thing we have to do is accept it. We have to accept it. So we have awareness of it, and then we have to accept it in this stage is, can I accept this money story and how it's playing out in my life? And that's the first step. And then we start visioning on what it could be like and what do we want to do this. And then we get into the real practical element of like, how do we actually unwind this money story and create a new one with neuro conditioning?
It's almost like an addiction in a sense. When you break it down like that, it sounds very much like something you would see in AA or something like that, where the first step in change is awareness, and we need to have awareness around the reason why you do what you do. And it's interesting that there's so many similarities and overlap between where you're working with people through money and us on the wellness side, and it really does then stem down to the conditioning and societal, parental, adolescent, everything leading up to bringing you to where you are today. And so with that in mind, what is for maybe parents with young kids or going to be having children soon, what is, because the adolescent years and how they grow up is what is going to kind of condition them to have the relationships that they do, what is something that a parent or soon to be or expecting can do in order to aid or help or uniquely prepare their children without having them to decondition the rest of their life and work through and find out about their relationship with money?
Great question. And I also love that you brought up the addiction, because I talk about that a lot. Everything that isn't working for you, if you have something which is happening to you in your life and you're not liking it, not enjoying it, you have an addiction underlying. Doesn't matter whether it's body, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, it's all an addiction. And it comes from some form of trauma, which is playing out in our life, and different people show it through different ways. Unfortunately, we've only attached addiction to really, we think it's alcohol or drugs. We think those people are addicted. I can tell you there's so many people, especially in my entrepreneurial world, who have worse addictions than the person who's on the street doing crack. I can honestly share that. But we as a society, we accept certain conditions. We put them up on a success. That's great because they're getting materialistic objects. But this other person is low. But if you really look at the core thing, we're all just got some form of trauma in us, and we're all suffering in some way. There's a great new documentary by Dr. Gabor Mate, which talks about this. He talks about how where we numb ourselves through some means. A lot of people are addicted to their phones right now. It all coming from the same way. We just have different outputs. So helping us be okay with addiction, I think, is the first step for change, is actually realizing that we're all addicted in some regards, and we can use the same principles to break free of it, and not to be on a high horse because yours output's different from someone else's. So that's one thing. I think that would help us connect, and anything that brings us more connected to every person in the world is a better outcome. In regards to parenting, I'm so glad you brought this up, because your money story, where did it come from? It came from your parents. So you have the greatest responsibility as a parent. You are the coder for a period of time. And whether you're aware or not aware, whether you're intentional or unintentional, you are coding. You're having an impact on the little ones into your life. So the first place would be to uncover the coder you are. I don't think many people actually know what they're coding into their children. So I would want everyone to actually do their money story and identify, what are my money saboteurs? I'll give you I've just created this program which we had for the money saboteurs. I've just created it as a free link because I've just decided I just want this to the world. And it's an incredible quiz which goes through, it's like a personality quiz for money, and it goes through the 12 saboteurs and goes in detail, and it tells you your 3 top saboteurs. So I'll give that to you afterwards. So I'd recommend everyone do this quiz. It's remarkable, and learn and become aware of what is happening in your life, and then start fixing it, start improving it. So then you have an understanding of what potentially am I sharing to my children, and I don't want to pass it on. It's a very enlightening exercise. Suddenly you're like, wow, I didn't realize I'm being exactly like my parents. It's so that's one liberating thing. Then really having open conversations about money. The more we can create an acceptance around money and stop putting it on a pedestal and just say that it's energy, and realize it's part of us and it's going to be part of our lives, and start talking about it, the more it takes away the taboo, it takes away this negative connotation, or that we can't ask questions, and people can start learning about it. And children naturally have a curiosity around it. Like kids, this is why so many kids start setting up little businesses, and they're all little entrepreneurs because they have a curiosity. They're like, wow, I get to do something, give value, and then receive something back for it, so then I can use it for something I value. They get that concept from a very, very young age. So the more we can connect with them and educate them and have open relationships, conversations about it, who knows what will happen in other parts of your relationships. If you start sharing, oh yeah, I have this strange relationship with money and it's affecting me, they might start realizing, oh, I'm susceptible to this program potentially as well, and they can be more open. And I would love it if people did that, because I'm a big believer that most things actually come back to money in some regard. In some regard, we've found a way to put such energetic connection. Like people, for example, we'll be talking about the relationship, and I'll go, well, money could actually fix that. Like for some reason, your money story isn't allowing you to get a cleaner to pay for the house to be cleaned, and that's causing all this friction in your relationship. Like, why wouldn't you just fix that? And I'm not saying money is the solution to everything, but I'm saying there's a connection somehow. And if we have open, loving conversations around it, we can stop making it such a big deal and just realize it's just energy, and that there's an infinite source of it. Like it's unlimited. Like seriously, we can just cross out of thin air. That's what humans do. It's a collective agreement. That's all money is. We've collectively agreed that this is worth something, just like any investment, any asset. We've collectively agreed. So why do we have to keep fighting over it? If we suddenly realize that it's infinite and we can have more, we wouldn't have all these wars, which would be quite amazing, I think.
If that's a fantastic point, because if you flip it, most people think money is finite, but their time is infinite. But the converse is actually true, that your time is infinite, your time is finite, your money is then infinite, but we don't approach life that way. We trade our time to make money, to buy things that we don't necessarily want, to impress people we don't even like, which I think that's either Will Smith or someone had that quote out there for that. But it's so true. And the point that you made that I love is that children see the value in being entrepreneurial, of offering value to others. Because I see this so much now more than ever. I think it might be partly due to the pandemic, or it might have been exacerbated by it. But so many people have confused business with an income, with making money.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what business is. Business is providing transformation and value to someone else. The bigger the problem you're solving for that person, the more money that's going to be on the other side as an energetic exchange for what it is that you offered. Without that energetic exchange, they're actually going to be devaluing what it is that you're offering. So it needs to be there. And like you said, money is infinite. And if you don't believe us, look what the US government did the past 18 months.
Yep.
Printed what, 30, 40% more? And this was a crazy stat. When I heard this, I was blown. 5% of currency is actually real and in circulation. The rest is a number on a computer that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, and it made me so sad, because if you looked at what we did last year, we had the ability to solve some of the world's greatest challenges that have been around for a long, long time. The amount of money that we just created out of thin air last year, we could have done this before. It is choice, but there's powers to be, there's the ego running through all of us, which keeps operating in this lack, operating in this scarcity mindset, which is stopping us from going to the next wave of evolution, really.
You said we look at money not as a means to an end, but in an effort to create a life of purpose and happiness. How do we use money to create a life of purpose and happiness?
Great question. So if you think about our values are what matters to us. And when we feel fulfilled, it's generally because we're living in line with our values. So what is money? Money represents your value. Where your money goes is what you supposedly value. Because if you're putting money in this particular area, it's saying that you are giving this value because you value what you're giving in exchange. The problem is a lot of people aren't doing it intentionally. And when they look at where their money's going, I can generally 95% of the time, even higher, show that you're in conflict with your values. You say you value this, but your money's going to this. Do you value all this crap? I have this like junk line in people's money spending. It's just like, this is junk. Do you value this? Is this what you value in life? And they're like, no. Well, I'm like, why do you keep consciously making that decision? There's something out of alignment here. So once we start realizing that money is just value, and that means that how we earn it, we need to make sure we value how we're earning it, how we're spending it, how we're giving it needs to be things that are in line with it. We'll start feeling so much better because we feel this complete alignment, which is really, and when we stop using money to make decisions, when people start making decisions around, well, I need to do this because of money, we have just given away our power. We've given away our purpose. We've given away our values, because we're actually saying that my values are compromisable. I'm okay to compromise our values because money is worth more. We've put money up on a pedestal again because I can tolerate this job even though I don't agree with its purpose or anything because it's providing this money. You have just compromised yourself. And you're never going to feel fulfilled when we do that. And that's why this can create this life once you get this connection, because you're like, oh, complete alignment. I feel whole. I feel connected to what I'm doing. And that becomes really, really liberating.
I want to pivot the conversation into how you got to where you are today and why. But before we do, continuing down the path of money, and it's something that I see, you see, that is individuals on kind of the spiritual, yogic, meditative path seem to disavow money and think of it as this evil. Why do you think that is? And how can we then change the script or flip the script and create a positive interaction with money while still allowing ourselves to follow that path? Because it doesn't have to be one or the other. They can live in harmony. It all stems from in here. But I'd love to get your thoughts, your feedback on this.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have been involved in so many different spiritual communities, and I do see it. I see it come up and affect the great connection what's there. So I'm a big believer that if you ever have anything that creates separation, then you're not acting in line with spirituality or God or source or anything like that, because it's all about connection. So you can't just say that something out there is evil. Like money can't be evil. Like God just wouldn't create that. There's something there to be able to have some relevance. And that's why I say it's the spiritual teacher, because it's connecting us. Just like the internet isn't evil, it's actually a way to come back to ourselves. It's a way to connect ourselves. I wouldn't be able to have some of the connections and understanding of other people in my life if it wasn't from the internet. Same with money. We can start getting that connection. So the reason why is because of their money story. For some reason, they've created a belief that money is evil. Maybe they heard money is filthy when they're young, or money is evil. When you hear those things, what's going to happen? That's a program which is put into you. So forever, when that comes up, you're just going to keep finding ways to. So then you look at things in life and you start finding who are the people who have been representing money as evil. So you might look at certain leaders in our life, you might look at certain business people, and you keep validating the story. But then you don't look at all the other parts of money, people who have been liberated through money, people who are doing really good things, all the humanitarian effects that have been out there because of certain money. And they don't see that there's actually a positive to it as well. It's that yin and the yang. So I'm not saying that money is amazing or money needs to be worshipped. It's just that money is part of us. So we need to have a relationship with it. So when you rather have a positive relationship with it, one that is freeing, one that is limiting, liberating rather than limiting, that would be really, really nice. And if you're feeling like you can't be spiritual with money, I question your spirituality. There's a constraint there. There's a restriction. And I just don't believe that needs to happen.
There's a documentary by Wayne Dwyer called The Shift. And in that, they talk specifically about money, and that money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is then the root of all evil, because money is something that is necessary and an energetic exchange of something that we need. But it's when you, like you said, you value money more than your own moral or ethical compass, is when then it becomes a problem, or in this case, then an addiction, because you're sacrificing something else in exchange for something that technically doesn't exist. But the story in your mind is what's telling you that you need more of it, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And we could dive deeper into this, but I do want to shift gears because I'm really curious. What was the shift for you? How did you come to where you are today? Was there a tipping point, or what was the kind of the impulse or impetus to want to follow the path that you're currently on?
So it's been a pilgrimage. So I definitely think there's been multiple facets which have been building. But if I had to pick one moment, it was a divorce. It was a moment where suddenly everything I thought I'd ever wanted, I had, and it wasn't enough. It didn't fulfill me. It didn't make me feel whole. And before I knew it was taken away from me. And in that moment, realized that even though I'd been living a life with intentionality, this was the great paradox for me. It's not like I suddenly went from not being intentional to being intentional. I was super intentional. Every decision, you look at my life from a moment where I had a traumatic event from 10 years old, I was so intentional with my decisions on how to make myself feel safe and how to look after myself and how not to hurt myself. I would do things like working out to how to earn money, how to move away, how to do all these different things. Everything was intentional. But the problem was it was coming from fear. It was coming from this place that I was not enough, that I was not worthy, that I'm going to keep getting abandoned in my life. And what I realized that once I'd created the dream vision for my life, I'd got it, and then I still got abandoned in that moment. I relived my trauma, because that's what you do with trauma. You keep bringing it back up until one day you learn. I realized, oh, wow, this is just going to keep on happening unless I intentionally get to know myself and uncover what is inside of me. And it was that year that I went and walked the Camino del Santiago pilgrimage. It was that year that I spent 3 months literally sitting in a house by myself, not distracting myself, where it could have been so easy. It could have been so easy just to go, well, great, I'm a young guy, I'm now free, I can go party, do whatever. I didn't. I sat there and I just got to know myself and forced myself to take actions like I hadn't done before. Like I reached out to my father I hadn't spoken to in 18 years. I did so much healing during that time out of necessity. It was out of pure necessity. I realized I did not want to live life anymore like this. Now, what's funny is my life was actually pretty amazing. It wasn't like I was miserable. There was a lot of joy, a lot of great things in my life, so many things I feel very privileged for, but that core connection to who I was, it just wasn't fully there. It was always missing. And I knew there was something more. I knew that there was something deeper and greater. And I just went deep into reading spiritual texts, religious texts, just absorbing information. And they all kept speaking about this thing, this elusive thing, which language can't ever really describe it. But once you get it, you know it. And I became committed to it. And that has been my commitment with everything I do now, is just to keep staying committed to that path, to keep discovering, because once you get it, you know how you can there's more. And there's also, you can lose it too. So you got to keep that connection. And that's really how it got me to it. And now I realize, well, if I've learned this, even though nothing I'm sharing is new, like I'll really bring that up, because sometimes people go, oh, I've heard that before. And it's like, great. I hope you've heard this before, and I hope you hear it again. And it's interesting that you've heard this, but still you're not applying it. You're not acting this way. So that's where I realized that knowledge is not good enough. Like you can't just learn things. You've got to actually apply it. That's where true wisdom comes in. So just when I keep sharing these things, I realize that's my responsibility now. That's how I need to share for other people. But also what it does, it helps me. Every time I teach or share, it's reinforcing and it's helping me explore. And I see myself and I'm like, oh, I'm coming up against that right now. Often what I'm sharing in these live sessions are things that I'm coming up against myself right now, because it's front of mind. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I might share this, and let's be curious about it. So I don't want to feel like I'm ever preaching or I'm ever saying this is the way. Everyone has their own path. I have my own unique path. But the beauty of it is to go, well, how about I find my path and then I make sure I get on my path, and how do I stay on it? Perhaps there's some people who are out there who have been on this path before, and they can give me some signposts. They can give me some direction. And that's really where I feel so privileged that I get to have that opportunity. I also so privileged that there's so many people out there who are giving me those signposts. It's amazing. And I love that we're in this state of life right now where suddenly I feel competition is starting to drop away, and we're realizing that we can learn from each other. It used to be, I definitely knew in my 20s, if I heard someone, like say I heard you and you were speaking a similar thing from me, I'd be comparing myself and going, oh, he didn't say that as well as me, or why is he so good? Like, why has he got so many followers? Like I speak better than him, or, well, I'm not doing that as well. When I was doing that, all I was doing was putting myself in a low vibrational state. I call it the prison of comparison. It's actually a principle of intentionality. Escape the prison of comparison by focusing on your path and what steps you can take today. I call it a prison because as soon as you start the game of comparing, that game is just never going to end. There's always someone who has more, who is better. It's a very, very dangerous game, and it's a prison because you're stuck in it. And you're always going to feel trapped. You're always going to be feeling lack. But how to escape it is to realize that you have a unique path. And perhaps right now you feel like you're behind that person. But what happens if they're about to do a big U-turn and they come back around you and you're about to accelerate forward? I talk about that with my experience a lot. And that moment, people were comparing themselves against my life. They wanted my life. I was living the dream for most people. I was skiing 100 days a year. I was living in a mansion. I was married to a beautiful woman. I was financially independent. I was having so much fun. And people, instead of connecting with me, they were comparing. They were then creating stories, creating separation. And I love bringing this up because I said, if you knew what you now know, that if 1 month later, all these things occurred, would you have wanted my life? And they wouldn't. So this is the dangerous game about comparison, is that you're only comparing against certain things. You're only picking up certain variables and only seeing these things. And you don't know what else is happening below the surface. You don't know that perhaps there's an illness about to pop up, or there's an injury, or there's a divorce, or there's a business failure. Very, very dangerous game. And at the same time, also, comparing yourself against yourself is also just as dangerous. So in that moment, when things I had lost, I started comparing myself against who I was. And I started feeling like I was less, that I was lack, and that I'd gone backwards. But what I didn't realize is that I was actually in a place where I was about to advance so much further than I could ever imagine. It was an opportunity for growth, transformation. I was going to learn things about myself, which would a lot of pain and a lot of heartache, but it was going to be able to make me love deeper than I could ever imagine that I could love before. And it was going to make me have better connections with people. It was going to be able to help me serve. It was going to be able to make me earn more money than I've ever earned before. It's another example of comparing, is the danger that you don't realize that this could actually be happening for you, not to you.
It's interesting that you say it like that, because one, by sharing your story, you're then giving other people permission to do the same and work through their own as well, because you're then giving guideposts while following someone else's. The part that struck me that I'm interested about is, where did that recognition or realization that you needed to have radical ownership for your own life come from? Because you could have easily distracted yourself and continued down that path, but you chose to sit with that emotion, sit with that experience, and then work through it. Where did that stem from? What is the underlying theme that allowed you to be able to do that?
So I remember this moment. This was a conscious moment for me. And I'm a big believer that sometimes you need to expand out to help you understand with what's happening right now. This event occurred for me. I really looked at, there was two paths for me. There was one path, which was just move forward, distract myself, not confront these things. And I looked at that and I went, where would this go? Where would this path go? And I looked at it and I went, well, in the short term, it would feel easier. It would probably have a lot of joy, a lot of fun. It could be these different things. I don't think true joy. It would have just been fun, pleasure. But in the long term, what would that lead to? Well, I probably wouldn't change. I'd probably be very similar. Perhaps I'd do mean things. Perhaps I'd do things I regret. I don't know if I'd be able to love again. That would be a really challenge, because I'd be reinforcing, knowing cognitive dissonance. I'd be reaffirming. I'd be looking at everything I can do to validate the story that I'm not lovable, that I'm going to get abandoned, and that I can't trust women, for example. That would be what I would do. So I looked at that and I went, well, that doesn't look that appealing to me. And then I looked at, well, remember the two seeds, that story? Well, that's the weed seed. What's the lotus seed? And I looked at that and I went, extrapolate out, okay, in the short term, I would have to confront some things. I'd have to go really inside and take extreme ownership, take complete ownership, and look at that. I can't blame anyone else, because I can blame, I can't remember who said it, but there's a great story that, like, you can blame things from your parents to a certain age, and then you become an adult, and then you're the one who kept hurting yourself after that. No one else was hurting you. You allowed the trauma to keep hurting you. And I had to face that. And in the short term, that looked pretty horrible, actually. Like, it was really confronting. There was things that I thought I would never do in my life. Like, I never thought I would speak to my dad again, but I chose to. It was different elements. But I looked at it and I went, well, in the long term, where could that potentially go? Where could that path go? Well, perhaps I would grow. Perhaps I would open up my heart rather than shutting it down. I perhaps learn how to love again. Perhaps I'd fall in love. Perhaps I could be a dad. All these different things. And I started looking at that, and that started looking like quite a nice lotus flower. And I realized that, yes, there was going to be some pain, some heartache in the short term, but would it be worth it for that long lotus flower? And this is where you can comparing it to the other path, I went, well, it's really a no-brainer. It's I've already done the other path. I've done the other path. That was my big awareness, is I am living in that path. I did everything I could to try to create an environment that would feel better. And this is how I'm feeling right now. And I feel horrible, and I feel shame, I feel sadness, I feel disgust. That path doesn't work. I've tried that path. Perhaps this path could work. And that was all I did. I didn't say it would. I just said, perhaps this could work. Perhaps I'll get something out of it, and who knows? And when I made it out of that, it became a lot easier. And then I realized, as I've reflected, I realized it was really two paths. It was love or fear. That was really what it was. And that's the number one principle of intentionality, is experience peace and joy by learning to choose love over fear. I had done the fear path. It was time to try the love path and see where that would take me. And I can say, a few years down the track, it's amazing. And I still have moments. I still sometimes lean into fear, but I can tell you the love path is so, so much stronger. And if only I discovered it earlier, and I don't have any regrets, but because I know it was meant to happen that way, but it would have been quite liberating. And that's really why everything I share now is it's not theory. This is just from my experience. This worked for me. Now, it may not work for you. However, I've seen it work a lot of times. And this is what I say to people is, you might be challenged right now with some things you're hearing. And you might be, this guy's just on another planet. I don't need to hear him. Or this isn't applicable to me. And I go, great, laugh at it. I've been there. I've been in your exact shoes. But imagine if you just tried one of these things. Just tried something. Tried a different behavior tomorrow. Just try it on. See how it goes for you. And then just look at what happens. Look at the outcomes. And then you might start changing your beliefs. You might start realizing, oh, I was actually operating from a fear-based place. And now I'm operating from love. Things started opening up and things started changing in my life.
If you could go back to that point or to just before that point, what would you say to yourself, knowing what you know now?
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. Just before that point, so before it was all crumbling, I would have just said, stop now and just completely expose yourself. Like expose yourself and trust that it's going to work out. So with my ex, I wish I had just shared more and just opened up and not felt like I had to take so much responsibility on, and just explored and just see what happened. I was operating from a place where, and a lot of us are, to tell you the truth, where we almost feel frightened to stop. We keep creating stories that, well, if I stop, then I'm going to lose, or that I'm going to fall behind, or something's going to go wrong. I don't think many people have ever regretted stopping or having a break or taking a sabbatical or meditating. It's like every time I meditate, I've never got up and said, I regret meditating. I wish I hadn't meditated. But tell you what, every time I sit down, there's a story of why I shouldn't meditate right now. And that's an example of the power of just stopping. There's a natural tendency in us which just wants to just keep moving. But sometimes we just need to stop and really get to know ourselves. And I would have probably just said, like, you can do this, and it's gonna be good for you. And just believe in it. And I have a lot of love for that younger version of myself now. I didn't for a long period of time. Like, I had a lot of shame around it, but I look back now and I just go, wow, like the courage you displayed, and you were trying and you were doing your best. Like you didn't know what you didn't know, and you tried to make a sense. And there's things I'm not proud that I did, but I'm really just, I have a lot of respect and a lot of love for that younger version of myself. And that's probably been the biggest lesson from all of this, is finding ways to love younger versions of ourselves, because we can't love ourselves now if we don't love ourselves in entirety. And we are right now a combination of every single moment of our life. And so you can't own, or you have shame around, then you're disowning a part of you right now. And that was definitely my journey, was to systematically just keep going back and finding ways to love myself. And I'll never forget when my heart blew open in this one moment was, and I knew it was coming. I had this gut sense that this was going to come at some point through my work, that eventually I'd have one meditation one day where all my little versions of Finn would all come together into one and amalgamate into myself. And it actually happened in the final meditation of a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat one time. I was doing a healing on someone else, and we were healing, we were sending love. And then at the end, you bring the love back into yourself. And it was really interesting. In this one moment, I just felt, I'm doing it right now. This is going to happen. And I just started just channeling all this love into myself. And then I started just seeing every version of younger Finn. And they all came together, and then they all just amalgamated into me currently right now. My heart literally exploded. And it's hard to describe what that does, but you feel it when that happens. And I just started just releasing, and emotions came out of me. And then I had these incredible, powerful older women around me. And they were all, I opened my eyes and they were just looking at me, and they were like, can we just hug you? That was the most amazing thing we've ever seen. And that's what can come from this. And if I was hearing my younger version of me, if they were hearing me right now, they're just like, what are you talking about? but they would have a sense. They would be curious. And that's all you need. If there's something, a little bit of curiosity, you start putting yourself in circumstances. And that's what younger Finn did. He had a little bit of curiosity, and he would start going, oh, this is out of my comfort zone, but I'll put myself into this situation. And now if I'm triggered, I generally find that as a sign, well, it's even probably more of a reason why I need to do this, because I'm about to learn something really great about myself.
I feel like that is a fantastic place to bookend this chapter, Finn. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out to connect today. And I have a couple rapid fire questions to cap off the end here. The first one being, in terms of your own personal development, who or what has had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, that's a great question. The greatest impact would be, all right, I'm going to give a different area. One book, Tao Te Ching. I literally read that every day while I was going through that journey. It helped me get to the Camino. It's all about the way, very forgiving. Greatest teacher would be Eckhart Tolle, and greatest individual would be connecting with myself, just actually starting to embrace myself.
If you could have a conversation with someone alive or not, who would it be and why?
Whoa. So I would love that. Obviously, it's a myth of a story, but Lao Tzu, for the creator of Tao Te Ching, I would have loved to have been at the gates and see him write that. That would be absolutely amazing. And then I feel, I think I'm going to stick with that. That will work for me.
If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, well, so the 10-year-old, my traumatic event happened on my 10-year-old birthday. And I've done this so many times. I've gone in and just said, you are loved, you are enough, you're going to be taken care of, you're a divine being. That's exactly what I'd say.
And lastly, in your opinion, what is the single most important thing someone can do to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life?
Make decisions out of love, not fear.
I love it. Fantastic, Finn. Thank you again for your time. I want to open the floor to you. Is there anything else you want to say or do? Where can people get in contact with you? The floor is yours.
Great. Well, I always like to share my website with a link. So it's finniankelly.com/podcast. In there, you'll get a bunch of intentionality resources, which will set you on your way. And my social accounts are at the Finnian Kelly. And to leave it with you is that intentionality is an action-based lifestyle. It's something which will leads to more peace, more joy, more love. And if you're ever in doubt, you just need to remember this one thing. You're one breath away from intentionality. One breath gives you a moment to choose a different behavior in the next step. And that's all it takes. And I'm just so excited to hear about your journey. Anyone who's listening, I love getting messages, and just make the decision. Live a life with intentionality.
I love it, Finn. Thank you again, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Hey, it's Kevin here, and before I let you go, I wanted to let you know that the complete show notes for this episode, as well as any other, can be found at kevinwathey.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a short review on Apple Podcasts. I love reading the reviews, and they're often the tipping point in helping us book some very hard-to-reach guests. Now, if you want to or would like to receive a weekly email from me called the Weekly Mindful Memo, head over to kevinwathey.com/VIP to subscribe. By signing up, you'll receive exclusive behind-the-scenes access and be the first to know about upcoming episodes, retreats, and more direct to your inbox. Again, you can sign up to receive the Weekly Mindful Memo by going to kevinwathey.com/VIP. Thank you for listening. Much love, and have a wonderful rest of your day.